G'day all, welcome back to Built by Chris. In this episode I'm going to show you how to use one of these, a circular saw. I've got a few people that I know that have asked me to put up a few videos on how to use certain tools, and I want to do a series on how to use some tools in the workshop, circular saw, drills, that sort of thing. Some of us who have been using tools for a long time take it for granted that this is how you use the tool, not realising that there's some people that are sometimes picking up for the first time and just really worried about losing a finger or not knowing how to use the tool properly. So I thought I'll do a couple of videos just to show you how to use tools properly. If you think it's a great idea, leave a comment down below for me. If you don't think it's a good idea, leave a comment down below for me, and we'll take it from there. But for this video, I'm going to show you how to use a circular saw, maybe make a jig, and we'll go from there. So follow me and let's see how we do it. Okay, so circular saw. What would you use a circular saw for? Well, what I use them for, if I'm cutting pieces of 4x2 down, if they're too long and I just need to make them a little bit shorter to make it easier for me to handle, I'll use one of these in conjunction with one of these. And I'll show you how to use that a little bit later on. If I've got a piece of plywood, an 8x4 piece of plywood, they're too big to put through my table saw, so I'll use, well, in actual fact I use my track saw to break the pieces down, but you can always use a circular saw. And I'll show you a little bit later on how you can make an easy track that'll do just the same job as a track saw. You need to know a few things about the circular saw before you start really jumping in and using one. Number one, if you're doing any modifications or you're changing anything on here, always take the battery off or unplug it, just to make it a little bit safer. That way you're not going to accidentally kick it on and lose a finger. So the most important part of this saw is the blade. Always keep your fingers away from there. Make sure that your safety guard always springs back after you finished it. That's just a handy little feature that'll keep your fingers from falling off your hands. There's the main body of the circular saw on here. It houses the motor and everything. You've got two handles that you can grip it and hold it nice and tight and nice and firm. In the case of the DeWalt, I can't speak for any other the circular saws because I've never used the other ones. This one's got a safety switch on the side. It's on both sides, so if you're left or right-handed, it accommodates both. You've actually got to physically push that down before you can pull the trigger for it to start. So it's another little safety feature. The plate, or the sole plate of the thing, you can actually put it on any angle you like, up to about 45 degrees. If you're beveling something or whatever you want to use it for. I personally leave it in this configuration. It's not very accurate, 45 degrees on this thing, so I leave it in the 90 degree. And if I need 45 degrees, I'll either use my my track saw, or I'll turn the blade on my table saw to 45 degrees. I'll get a much more accurate cut that way. In this one, the tool to take the blade off is on board. I don't use this one because it's just not long enough. It's a little bit short. I always reach for my trusty king chrome one. A lot longer, gives me a little bit more leverage. Now to take the blade off and put a new blade on, very simple, and I'll show you how easy that is. On most circular saws, there's a button on the machine which locks the blade. In this case, I'll push that down, and all you do is you turn it until you feel it click in. And there it is. That's clicked in, so that's now locked the blade in. More or less. There you go. Lock the blade in. Okay, so I've got that locked in. That's not moving anywhere. Put my Allen key in there and give it a bit of a turn, and that undoes this center nut or center bolt here. Take that out. Now you've got a little flange that sits on there. The little flange comes off as well. Now the easiest way to do this, the way I do it, is I open it up and I pull the guard out the way, or the shoe out the way. Lock that in so it doesn't move. Pull my guard out the way, and then the blade just comes straight out. Like that. There we go. Now, another thing you need to know about some of these blades is the middle hole in the blade. Sometimes it's bigger than what your arbor is on here. So you get those little like washers that fit in there. I don't know if you can see that, there it is, that little washer, that fits in there, and it just sizes it to your arbor. So every time you buy a new blade, it should come with 3 or 4 different sizes, so you just pick out the one that fits your blade. The outside diameter will always be the same as the other blade you're buying, but the inside diameter is the one that you use to fit your saw. Okay, so to fit a new one, I'll take this one out just to show you how easy it is. I've got a new blade here, so again I pull the guard back. Now you've got to make sure the teeth are going in the right direction, and there's always an arrow which way the thing's going to be spinning, or which way it needs to be spinning, and you just marry it up with, I've got an arrow on here that tells me which way it goes, so you just marry those two up. Pop that in there. There we go, that's sitting down. So now you put that washer plate back on. Put the nut back in. That's a reverse thread, by the way, on this one, so lefty loosey, righty tighty doesn't apply. Now I lock that blade down again. That'll lock down in a minute, and then I'll just tighten it up. There we go. Like I said, the longer one gives me a little bit more leverage, and I can just crank it down just that little bit harder. And there you go, that's on. So I have a new blade on there, that's ready to go. All I've got to do now is pop the battery back on, and I'm away. Okay, I just want to talk about blades for a moment. A lot of people think that a blade's a blade. That's not the case. In my case, I have 2 different blades for my circular saw. One of them's a 40 tooth blade, and the other one's a 24 tooth. Now what would you use them for? It's the same with any blade you might use, be it in your miter saw, be it in your table saw. The more teeth, the cleaner the cut. The less teeth, the rougher the cut, but the quicker the cut, if that makes sense. I primarily use, if I'm ripping down plywood, I primarily use my 40 tooth blade because it leaves a lot cleaner cut on the plywood, doesn't chip it out as much. As opposed to if I'm doing 4x2s or anything like that, I use my 24 tooth blade. So you should have, with your circular saw, you should have at least 2 blades just to swap and change between the 2. Okay, here I have a piece of 4x2 clamped to my workbench, so it's not moving anywhere, it's nice and sturdy. That's what you want. You don't want the piece of wood moving around on you because it makes the cut a lot harder. I've got a square here, I'm just going to square off one end, make a pencil mark, and I'm cutting on that side of the line. Okay, so you just line the teeth up with your mark. I always pull the safety blade back, push down on the button, pull the trigger. Now, with practice, you can get a fairly square cut. And in my case, I've aced it in one. How good am I? The other way that you can get a nice easy cut, or a nice square cut, is using a square. All you do is you pop that up against your piece of timber, and you run the blade or the saw along that, and that gives you a perfect cut. Same again. There it is. Nice cut again. Let me just get my square out. Look at that. Not as good as my freehand one, but there it is. Now the easiest way to break down plywood is with a track saw. Now if you don't have a track saw, don't panic, you can make your own track. So it's simple, it's easy. I used one for many years before I bought my own track saw, and they work just as well, believe me. And you don't need that much equipment to make one, or that much material to make one. In my case, you need a nice thin piece. I've got plywood here because it's just what I have on hand. So you've got a small piece and you've got a wider piece. So it's, how long is this? It's probably about 1500, 1200 maybe. Same with this, about 1200 long. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to sandwich one on top of the other, screw it down, and there's my track. And I'll show you how easy that is. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from the outside of my sole plate here to the inside of my blade. That'll give me an idea of how far in I have to set my fence on my track that I'm going to be making. So let me just get a tape measure here. Now in my case, it's 102 millimeters. 102 millimeters. Okay. So I'll move that out the way. I'll get my carpenter's square here and I'll set it to 105 millimeters. And I'll tell you why in a minute. So I'll set that to 105 millimeters. There it is there. And that's where I'm going to be setting the fence up against that 105 mil. I need to have the overhang here to start off with. All right. So I'm just going to get myself some screws and I'll screw this down. Okay, we're all set to go here. I've got my drill with my drill bit, countersinking bit in there, and I've got my screws ready to go. I've got my carpenter's square set to 105 millimeters, and I'm just going to pop that up against there and put my first screw. So let me do that. First screws in, just make sure it's 105 mil. It's not critical, trust me, it's not critical. It's just an arbitrary number that I've picked just to make life a little bit easier for myself. So now I'll put one at the other end. There we go, 105 mil there, and I'll pop another screw in. This is really how easy it is. And I'm just going to put a few in along the way just to make it all nice and snug and tight, but I'll make sure that 105 is the same all the way down. Screw going in now. Put one in a little bit further down. Make sure it's at 105 mil. Okay. And there is my track. Got this down, that's nice and tight, that's not moving anywhere, it's not going to flex. There it is. Okay, so I've got my my track ready to go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp it to my bench so it doesn't move anywhere. Just using a couple of spring clamps here. So that's nice and tight on my bench now, and I'm going to cut off that little piece that I left on. So I just put the saw on here. I'm just going to set the depth so I'm not cutting too deep. So I'm just basically cutting just through. There we go, lock that down. Plus the motor's going to clear the spring clamp on the side there, which will be in my way. And now I go for the cut. There it is. Track is now complete. You now have a track that is a zero clearance track to this saw, and you can use it to rip down plywood, whatever you want to do. Now let me go get a piece of plywood and I'll show you how easy it is and how straight it'll cut. Okay, so here I've got some form ply. I've got it clamped to my workbench, so that's not moving anywhere. That's nice and tight. Here's my track. Now what I'm going to use, I want to take off the factory edge off this form ply. So I'll set my my little carpenter's square. Let's just pick a number at random here. I'll make it 10 mil. Set my little carpenter's square to 10 mil, and I'll just butt the track up to it, and I'll clamp it down. So there's one side clamped down. Butt it up to the other side. Clamp that down. Just make sure that it's nice and tied up against it. There we go, perfect. Perfect. 10 mil, 10 mil, 10 mil. As my old granddad used to say, measure twice, cut once. Okay, so my track's in place, it's clamped down, it's not moving anywhere. My whole workpiece is clamped to the bench, that's not moving anywhere. Safety first, people. I've got my circular saw ready to go. I've set the depth of cut so that it's just cutting through the bottom of the form ply that I've got here. Okay, so pull the safety guard back, pop your track on, pop your saw on the track, and away we go. And there it is, perfectly cut, perfectly. There it is. And if I take this off here, take that off there. Look at that, no tear out, nice clean cut. Homemade track saw. So if you can't buy a track saw, if you can't afford a track saw, you're not going to use one all that often, but you just want one for a couple of uses, you can make your own. There it is. And there you have it, a very quick video, and I said it was going to be a quick video on how to use a circular saw. If you've got any other questions regarding it, leave me some comments down below. I'll answer each and every one of them. Just a little bit of housekeeping now. My channel is growing every day, and to my new subscribers I say thank you for subscribing and welcome aboard. There's a couple of shows coming up in August. The first one is from the 8th to the 11th. That's the Wood Dust show, and that's going to be in Footscray. If you want to have a look it up on the website, it's the Wood Dust show. Have a look at it. I'll be there with Dirk from Sumo's Projects. So if you see me walking around, and let's face it, you can't miss me, come up, shake my hand, say hello. I'll be only too happy to meet you. Same again in August on the 23rd. It will be the Timber and Woodworking show at the Melbourne Showgrounds. Again, I'll be attending that one. Again, on both occasions, just as a spectator, a visitor. So if you see me there, please come up and say hello. I'll be only too happy to say hello and shake your hand. One more little piece of business. Eric Freethinker. I've been thinking about what you said the last time, and I think I've come up with a solution. If you check my About page on my YouTube channel, I'll leave my address there for you, and you can send me a stamped self-addressed envelope, and I'll be only too happy to send you a couple of stickers. I think that that takes care of the concerns you might have. With that, I'll finish the video. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down. And I'll see you all on the next one. Bye for now.